Hello, in this video I will show you how to connect to Wi-Fi on the ESP8266. It will be a relatively straightforward tutorial on how to do it. This is partially the default example that they have. You can find them in the files, but I have simplified it and I've also added a more realistic approach to things on how you would use things in the real world. At least I believe that is the case. So the first part is just the basic explanation and the setup of what you need to put in and where you need to put in all in, and then the next part will be connecting to a TCP socket. Now I have this Visual Studio application. It's part of my network sockets in C# course. Take a look at that if you want to learn about TCP, UDP and web sockets in C#, and that example will be launched. It's a simple TCP server-side application. It awaits for connection, it reads what it receives, and then it sends a response. That's it, that's all we have. But you'll see how it's done on sort of a local network basis. So let's get started. For now, we have some well, characters, right? Characters we have pieces of text, basically. The first one is the SSID. Now, if you go on your phone and you search for Wi-Fi, you'll see all that list. That will be your SSIDs. You can also find them on your routers. You will usually have a little sticker and you'll find your SSID on the router. The password is, of course, your Wi-Fi password. That can be on your router as well. That can be a password that you have created. These are hidden, the values are hidden, but these are custom values depending on what you have. The next thing is the host. The host, in this case, since we are using local host, so to speak, on the local network, it will just be the IP address. It could, of course, be a remote one or a friendly name. It could also work with that. And then we have the port. I'll explain those things a bit later. Okay, so we have the variables, right? The SSID and the password are the two ones that will be used for connecting to things. Now, if you are going to do something like this, I would suggest going into the default example and just copying the syntax. It will be a lot easier. Arduino IDE is unfortunately not like Visual Studio, where you can easily find things by just typing in the first letter of the word, right? It doesn't really work that way in Arduino. So you just have to go in, copy. The include is, of course, the most important thing here. You'll have to copy that, and then you'll probably need to copy some of the other pieces of this syntax. Now, the setup is where we do things. First of all, we need to open the serial, because we will need to read the responses. We will write what the server sends, and then in the console application that I'll launch on this computer, we will see basically the response or the request, whichever word you like, basically a message to the server. We will read it on the console application. But to open the console for the device, we need to begin, right? We need to begin. Now we can watch my other video on how to set it up, and now you can actually use the latest version of Arduino and the ESP thing. Everything is latest and it seems to be working now. I have verified it several times with several different arrangements, so it should be good enough. So let's open up. Okay, let's just go into the tools. Let's go into the tools and let's open up the serial monitor. You will need that if you want to sort of follow along. That is the serial monitor right here. Okay, we have this, and once we launch it, we will read some things from it. Now, this is just some basic stuff. We print the line, we print the SSID just so we don't get lost in all that information. And then you have to set the Wi-Fi mode as SDA. Wi-Fi mode, SDA, station. That will make it sort of not get lost in different types, okay? This is just the default thing that you do, and it will make it work perfectly. If you don't do it, it should supposed to be working, but you never know. So just do it, just don't forget it. And again, just open the original example, it will be there, copy it, paste it, and you will be good to go. Wi-Fi SDA needs to be set before the connection is initiated. To create the connection or to connect, you simply begin. Okay, so we use begin, we provide the SSID and the password. Now, what comes next is probably the more important part, because you need to have some kind of at least a way to, well, check if it is connected or not. So we have a status, right? A status. Now, in this case, we just print it, right? We print it to the serial, but in the real world application, you would probably blink a light or do something of that nature. So it wouldn't be just a print. You would do a different kind of a procedure. But what it does, it gives you, it finds you, it checks for you the Wi-Fi status, and you have several different statuses, but the main ones are either connected or not connected. So the way you check, this is what you put in for connected. So if these are true, okay, if these are true, then it is connected. If it's not equal to that, if the status is not equal to that, it's not connected. That's it. And we loop, okay, we have a loop. Every 500 milliseconds, we print a little dot. That means it's still loading, it's still connected. And once it is connected, we escape this whole loop and then we move on. Okay, we move on and just says connected, nothing too fancy here. Now, once we move on from the loop, we come out of the setup. Okay, we are done with the setup, that's it, the setup is no more. And after the setup, as you probably know, it goes into the loop. Okay, it goes into the loop. Now, some of this, again, is sort of fancy arrangement, and it is from the example, the original one, but I have simplified it. I hope that it will be easier to read. We have this little Boolean value, and that will just be to wait for another sending of the data, another iteration of this example. I did not remove this. Perhaps you'll need it if you want to download this stuff. Both the server-side application that I will use and this piece of code will be available on my Patreon, as well as all the other code that you see on YouTube that is available. You can find it all on Patreon. And do take a look at my network course, C# network sockets course. It's very interesting, it's very informative. You'll learn about TCP sockets, UDP sockets, how to handle multiple clients, multiple requests, and things like that. It's very interesting and useful experience. So let's go back to the top. The main thing that sends data and receives data via Wi-Fi and via TCP. This is based on TCP. It's not UDP. UDP would be a different thing. This is TCP. So the main thing that controls it is the Wi-Fi client. Wi-Fi client. And it's called client in this case. Now, the way you connect it, again, it's all simple and straightforward. Client, connect, provide the host, and provide the port. Now, the port is your TCP port. So if you do this on server, you'll have to open your TCP port. You'll have to go to the firewall, you have to open it. In Visual Studio, it's done automatically. You just have to get this prompt and it opens up. Obviously, if you cancel, you'll need to go to the firewall and do it manually, but it's a bit easier in Visual Studio. Now, you will need to open up the TCP port, and the reason I'm saying TCP port because there is a UDP port as well in firewall. You have two options, either TCP or UDP port. So make sure you open the correct one, otherwise it will be rather difficult to figure out what's going wrong. And this could be IP address, this could also be a friendly name. Personally, I would use IP addresses. It's perhaps a bit more convenient to find things, but it is your choice. Okay, so we connect, and if the result is false, we just print connection failed, and it basically ruins the whole application. It doesn't work anymore. It returns from the loop. That's it. is done. Now, if it does work, if it does connect, we'll then move to connect it to server, and you can see it's print line, but this print line is not in serial. Right here we have serial, but this one is in client. So in fact, what this will do, it will write the data into the TCP stream towards the server. It will write that data, and then the server will receive it and then display it in the console application. It will do that. Now, this arrangement comes from the default example. Basically, it just checks for the timeouts. If the server is unable to read and receive, it's not going to be available, and it will give you timeout. So if you're gonna test it, and if you're just gonna pop some domain name and try it that way, maybe your personal blog or your site, it's probably not really gonna work. It needs to work with a proper TCP arrangement that's ready to read and ready to answer. Okay, let's move on. After that, we have client available. So if the client is available, right, and while it is available, it gives you data. It feeds you data, right? It feeds the client data. And then this is how you read it to characters. Now, I'm not going to get too much into that. I just really wanted to show you how to connect to Wi-Fi. But this is how you can read it. Again, this is all in the default example, so you can go through that and find it. This is quite simple and straightforward. Basically, it reads the binary data, and then it just converts to this character arrangement, let's call it that. And then we just print it, so the result is printed, and then the connection is closed. The main thing here, if you want to close this client, Wi-Fi client connection, you do stop. Okay, stop will close the connection. So now let's run it. Let me show you how it's all, how it runs, how you run it, and how you launch it. Perhaps that's interesting to you, and then we will be done. To run the code, I first need to execute the TCP sockets, the server-side TCP application program, whichever word you like, and that will start running, and that will start listening for new connections. Now, with TCP, it's not sort of open kind of a thing. You do have to wait for a connection, and only then you receive or send the data. Now, let's get back to the Arduino. Okay, we are back, and in here you first need to reset your device, so I'm going to do that right now, just in case. I've probably done it before, but just in case you need to do that, because it takes quite a while to wait for this whole thing, and it can get rather annoying if it fails. We also have a serial reader thing opened. Right here we have it, so it just read the reset command. Let's clear the output, and now I'm just gonna upload. So we just click the upload, and it will upload, and it will give us results. So we'll skip to that. So the project has now been launched and compiled and uploaded, and all those things have happened. We have in the bottom here the console application, the server side, and now it's doing its job. So hopefully it will connect very soon and send the request and receive a response. Actually, we are at a bit of a break point in the Visual Studio, so I'm just going to skip through that. Okay, and then that's done. It's all great and good. Let's just get back to in here, and you can see right here, hopefully you can see it properly, we have a received request. So that came from the Arduino, connected to server, and the response was sent works, the little word works, and that is right here. You can see it right here, works. So everything was sent, everything was provided, everything works perfectly. But again, if you need to do a job like this, simply go into the example and copy the stuff you need. Don't copy the whole thing and then try to remove it. Rather copy it piece by piece. It will be easier that way. These examples do include a lot of sort of unnecessary printing to the console, and it can be rather annoying to deal with them. Now do take a look at my TCP, UDP and WebSockets course. It will be very interesting. Take a look at my C# development course. Take a look at my Blazor course. All my courses are quite interesting, quite useful. New technologies you can learn, and definitely technologies that you can use in the market these days. Now, with that said, we will conclude this video.